But right now, we need to focus on what unites us. And if we're smart, smarter than they are, we do this. We really don't have to wait another 20 years to see how choreographed all of this is, right?
I'm afraid because, again, I want civilization to win. I want the West to win.
The issue in the United States support for Israel is not left and right. The real king is the next generation, the usual idiots of the West.
And Jewish donors, they have a lot of explaining to do, a lot of decoupling to do, because Jewish donors have been the #1 funding mechanism of radical, open border, neoliberal, quasi-Marxist policies, cultural institutions, and nonprofits. This is a beast created by secular Jews. And now it's coming for Jews, and they're like, what on earth happened? And it's not just the colleges, the nonprofits, it's the movies, it's Hollywood, it's all of it. It's like, time for you guys to wake up and say no more, draw a line in the sand. I don't care if you hate me.
So, hardcore pro-Israel Kirk says Jewish donors are funding destabilizing open border policies, which every right-wing person believes is a direct attack on the West. And now, political consultant and left-wing journalist Naomi Wolf, and author of the Pfizer papers, makes a similar claim at the EU Parliament COVID hearings.
Of the almost 43,000 serious adverse events in the Pfizer papers, they're not randomly distributed around the world. They're localized in Western democracy.
So it cannot be lost on us that Charlie Kirk pilling his base, indirectly validating Nick Fuentes, would have been devastating for the pro-Israel base. But what Charlie just pulled off there was a direct result of free speech. Regardless of how you feel about Charlie Kirk's assassination, we don't want to live in a world where anyone is silenced for speech. Not by debanking, not by deplatforming, and not by murdering.
This is a source that I trust very much, and this is coming from the top levels of government. And they were having dinner with people, senators in the Senate Foreign Intelligence Committee. They are not openly saying this at this point.
Of course not.
But in private conversation, they're saying, hey, this looks like potentially Israel is behind this.
Wow.
And then in terms of getting to the actual evidence itself, a very close friend of Charlie Kirk's put out there. Charlie didn't want to put out this tweet himself, but he told a friend to put it out on the internet and said, hey, if I go against Israel, I think they will kill me.
And when did he say this?
This was August 13th.
So less than a month ago.
I can see Charlie over the last few months sort of take in new information and have his mind shift a little bit, right? He used to be an Israeli loyalist. Then he starts to sort of mildly criticize Israel in that, hey, I don't think, we shouldn't be allowed as an American to question the acts of a foreign government.
I have text messages, Megan, calling me an anti-Semite. I have less ability sometimes online to criticize the Israeli government without backlash than actual Israelis do. Mm-hmm. And that's really, really weird, isn't it, Megan?
And he publicly said, hey, maybe Epstein was Mossad. He certainly had a lot of connections to Israeli ex-prime ministers.
And there's also this clip where he questions how October 7th happened.
Was there a stand down order? 6 hours? I don't believe it. Israel's the size of New Jersey. When I took a helicopter ride from Jerusalem to the Gaza border, it's 45 minutes, 6 hours. They're live streaming the killing of Jews. Did somebody in the government say stand down? That is a legitimate, non-conspiracy question.
I mean, this is a big problem for Israel. Charlie Kirk was maybe the most influential figure on the right, especially with people under the age of 30. Mm-hmm. And when you start to have somebody that influential as a conservative is say, hey, we need to maybe reassess this relationship. There's something weird going on. This is a warning to people in the media to say, hey, you need to stop this right now, because you could be next.
And if anyone is truly interested in real justice here, we have to push a message of unity. Even though Charlie Kirk employed divisive rhetoric for most of his tenure at Turning Point, tiny little cracks were beginning to show because he was listening to people. He was listening to the other side. So evolution is possible, even for the most radical of us. And any politician advocating for censorship right now is not a representative of this country and should be shamed and primaried, period. For example, if you live in Louisiana, this guy, Clay Higgins, is your representative. And in less than 48 hours, he jumped on the opportunity. He posted this first thing on September 11th. I'm going to use congressional authority and every influence with big tech platforms to mandate immediate ban for life of every post or commenter that belittled the assassination of Charlie Kirk. If they ran their mouth with their smart-ass hatred celebrating the heinous murder of that beautiful young man who dedicated his whole life to delivering respectful conservative truth into the hearts of liberal enclave universities armed with only a Bible and a microphone and a constitution, those profiles must come down. So I'm going to lean forward in this fight, demanding that big tech have zero tolerance for violent political hate content, the user to be banned from all platforms forever. I'm also going after their business licenses and permitting. Their businesses will be blacklisted aggressively, they should be kicked from every school, and their driver's license should be revoked. I'm basically going to cancel with extreme prejudice these evil, sick animals who celebrated Charlie Kirk's assassination. I'm starting that today. That is all. How prepared were they for this? Clearly, they were very prepared and very opportunistic. So you realize that this rhetoric that Clay Higgins is pushing is essentially what it's going to be like living under the digital prison that they're building, where you won't have to go to an actual prison anymore. You will just be cut out from society completely in every conceivable way. They've already been doing that, obviously. Now they're trying to make this mainstream. And while they actively push to get the execution video removed from the internet lest we focus too closely on the hand signals of the men behind for too long, they are dropping his wife crying over his body in a casket while Lauren Boebert pushes this bill. The House just passed a bill punishing politically motivated boycotts of Israel. Far-right Rep. Lauren Boebert added an amendment to the Pentagon budget that targets the BDS movement against Israel, which means that they just made it illegal to stop arming Israel. Now I'm wondering what that joint Republican-Democrat trip to Israel was in August. What were they planning? Because this is all too sus. It's extraordinarily calculated. If you live in Colorado, by the way, Lauren Boebert represents what you want for America, just so you know. And while they are proving what Nick Fuentes has been saying all along about Jewish and Zionist power, he himself has easily taken the bait of promoting mass censorship.
For the people that are selling t-shirts, mocking his execution, for the people that are saying he deserved it for some such other reason, these people must be ostracized from our society. We must identify them. We must have them fired from their jobs. They must be censored on social media. There must be a cost.
That is Nick Fuentes forgetting that Zionists see white people who are anti-Israel just as vile as he sees people who are celebrating Kirk's death and are similarly calling for the censorship of white anti-Zionists. When you go down this path, everyone will be targeted easily because none of the elites are on our side. They keep manufacturing this division between us. But when they target us, they target all of us. And of course, the Zionists are trying to capitalize on that. Here's a Zionist ready to embrace him. It's time to invite Nick Fuentes back into the mainstream fold to the right wing. His audience is massive and his influence is underrated. The right must unite more than ever and put aside the fruitless quarrels of the past. In order to win, we have to be united. Who agrees? They're passing a message of unity and violence at the same time, issuing death threats to Candace Owens, telling her that she will be next or your time is coming. They are willing to do whatever it takes to give Israel what it wants. And giving Israel what it wants is ensuring that Israel becomes a hegemon and we become a gutted country. But this must be why they target Christians for conversion, because it happens so easily. And here's an example of it.
Charlie Kirk cannot call himself a Christian anymore. Sorry. You forfeited that. I do not want to hear, and you cannot allow Charlie Kirk to go to one more public event, one more question and answer, one more ask me anything, without being protested, without being shouted down, without being interrogated about this. This guy goes around from campus to campus in the most artificial and phony and fake way, talking about, oh, God made me very blessed that I control $500 million. Oh, I'm so blessed. I'm so rich and I'm so blessed. No, I'm such a Christian. Oh, the Lord gave me the Sabbath. I take Saturday off. You sit there and call yourself a Christian and then you make excuses for the genocide of 2 million people? Seriously? You stand there and purport to be an evangelist like Billy Graham? Oh, you're the latest Billy Graham? You're our generation's America's pastor? Why? Because you said the right words? Because you said, God bless. And then you go around from campus to campus making excuses for a famine? We had our disagreements. Where we did agree is that he would go to these college campuses and proclaim the name of Jesus Christ. And ultimately, that is why he was killed. The gunmen that killed him, they hated him because of his defense of Christian morality. Charlie Kirk cannot call himself a Christian anymore. Sorry, you forfeited that.
So, clearly he says a lot of things that he doesn't really mean in the sense that he was saying with conviction that it's not Christian to be a genocide apologist, essentially. And suddenly he changed his stance on that. But that's not the point, right? The point is you don't have to hate on the guy while he's dead to be consistent. But to do an entire 180 seems reactionary, maybe? Leaders are expected to have a higher capacity for clarity and to be very rooted in what they preach. But this is Zionism. It dislodges you. It will literally turn you against yourself. Because here you have Nick Fuentes and unwittingly encouraging his young followers into the same censorship prison that he spent most of his adult life in by joining the Zionist chorus of cheering on the censorship of others. And I have a feeling he's not going to walk it back. But this is why it's important to embrace free speech, agree with people where you agree with them, but never commit to blind loyalty. Still, I do understand the fear and I do empathize. It's mayhem right now. I cannot imagine the levels of anxieties people in leadership positions are feeling right now, especially knowing that people are likely to cheer and celebrate if you die. But I commend Nicholas for discouraging his base from all acts of violence. Myron Gaines did the same. I can't say the same for all of the right-wing people, but it's really nice to see that some of them came up and, said that. But if you go on X right now, and I heard other people saying that it's similar on Blue Sky, you just see everyone promoting division and celebrating violence in one way or another.
And none of this is an accident. This is word for word textbook psychological operation. And military psyops manuals literally describe how you isolate a target audience, then you pump them full of a bunch of outrage, you create a tribal us versus them identity. Because once you're locked into tribal thinking, you're going to swallow anything. You're going to believe any lie about the other side. You're going to cheer when other people suffer. You'll excuse things that you would never excuse in your own neighborhood if you watched it right in front of you and it was one of your neighbors. And let me tell you something that you're not supposed to think about right now. You share more in common. You share more with somebody across the aisle than with a billionaire donor or some media executive pretending to speak for you.
And they're not just doing that against the radical left. They're also putting a target on anti-Israel influencers. Because that's what this is about. This is about Israel. This is not about America. And listen to them put the target on anti-Israel influencers.
Be honest about a point. Anti-Semitism exists on the right as well. Voices like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, Stu Peters are unacceptable and dangerous. And we at the Republican Jewish Coalition take this threat very seriously. We work independently and in partnership with allies like Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro to call it out and root it out. We must be vigilant, always. We do not ignore it. We confront it loudly and consistently.
So, I have people in the comments who tell me, you're focusing on Gaza. Everything is about Gaza. Everything is right now because our country is being drained dry for Gaza. We have policies in place that are purposely manufacturing division, manufacturing crimes, manufacturing chaos for Israel's agenda. So if you don't see the connection or see the reality that we cannot solve our problems at home unless we divorce from this entity, this illegitimate state, then your eyes are still only half open, which is interesting coming from me because I just woke up a couple of months ago. And so I'm saying this with conviction, I absolutely know. But if this isn't all connected, please let me know. Please give me some perspective because that's how I'm seeing it right now. Here's the thing, America, we're all scared. And public figures especially must feel the heat of the target. Because everyone knows what this is. And what happens if Nick Fuentes refuses to betray everything he stood for and join the fold, except the invitation? Will he be executed by a black person or a trans person? Clearly, there are online secret communities that are grooming emotionally and mentally vulnerable people to be activated in certain moments. There is no amount of online censorship or online government protections from big tech that is going to do anything about those online communities because some of them are run by the FBI. There's no amount of online censorship that is going to do anything about the MK Ultra programs. And if you think about it, it's so odd because it's like people from the right and left don't even understand how much they're being groomed to be hateable people because of how dehumanizing some of their views can be. So that if the state wants to use you as an example, they could execute them and blame it on a person that was impacted by their dehumanizing rhetoric. Look, I don't know what I would do if I suddenly felt the anxiety of possibly being the next public execution, but I imagine if you're a devout Christian, you wouldn't buckle easily. And it makes me think a little bit differently about Charlie because Charlie knew that he was being targeted. He was feeling the pressure. He was being called an anti-Semite, and he knows how dangerous that term is. It's a very, very powerful term. And still, even up to the day before he died, he asked Ben Shapiro if the media was lying about Israel and what it's doing in Gaza. Like, he didn't shy away from continuing to question Israel. And then to see this happen the very next day, it is scary. Even regular internet users like you and me are being targeted with censorship, doxing, harassment, getting fired from our jobs for exercising our First Amendment. And at this point, people are so charged, it could be worse. Because the gloves and the masks are way, way, way off. But at least, like, for Christians, and I don't mean like the Christian Zionists who are selling their souls to defend genocide and pedophilia, but like Christians, I'd imagine that their fears would be more assuaged than the average person's because of the strength of their faith. I have been exploring Christianity lately, but I'm far from understanding how Christianity protects a soul from being so contaminated by and or fully sold to satanic forces. But I do think ultimately we have to see that regardless of your faith, everyone is being groomed into becoming the same thing. In the same way Charlie was groomed into being a genocide apologist who pushed the divisive, dehumanizing agenda of his handlers, people on the left have been groomed and programmed to do the same to people on the right. In fact, Charlie actually noticed this and called it out. And surprisingly, he wasn't polite about it.
And Jewish donors, they have a lot of explaining to do, a lot of decoupling to do, because Jewish donors have been the #1 funding mechanism of radical, open border, neoliberal, quasi-Marxist policies, cultural institutions, and nonprofits. This is a beast created by secular Jews. And now it's coming for Jews, and they're like, what on earth happened? And it's not just the colleges, the nonprofits, it's the movies, it's Hollywood, it's all of it. It's like, time for you guys to wake up and say no more, draw a line in the sand. I don't care if you hate me.
So it cannot be lost on us that Charlie Kirk pilling his base, indirectly validating Nick Fuentes, would have been devastating for the pro-Israel base. But what Charlie just pulled off there was a direct result of free speech. Charlie was slowly beginning to demonstrate that these open debates that we have can inspire a change of heart. Even Tucker didn't go as far as to call out Jewish people specifically, because historically lots of bad things have happened to people in critical positions of power who began questioning Jewish supremacy and or Jewish power. Whatever Charlie Kirk's sins, anti-Semitism is the riskiest one because of his reach and influence. And I think out of all the things that Charlie Kirk stood for, based on what he was coming to terms with, in my humble opinion of course, he would want you to never forget this leaked audio from ADL's Jonathan Greenblatt.
I also want to point out that we have a major generational problem. This is not a left-right gap, folks. The issue in the United States of support for Israel is not left and right. It is young and old. We really have a TikTok problem, a Gen Z problem, that our community needs support. The same brains that gave us Tech League, the same brains that gave us all these other amazing innovations, need to put our energy towards this, fast. Because again, we've been chasing this left, right divide. It's the wrong game. The real game is the next generation, the useful idiots in the West. We saw a dramatic change in the language of the activists here in America on October the 8th. Like Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Voices for Peace. The language I could show you from their toolkits, because our analysts are in their groups. We saw this again on October the 8th. It was that fast. Like the language in their toolkits was all about the Zionist entity.
Yes, Jonathan Greenblatt, it was all about the Zionist entity. Everybody was noticing, and now you realize that you had to get rid of the useful idiots of the West. That's what he said, by the way.
The real game is the next generation, the useful idiots in the West.
If the Tates and the Fuenteses of the internet really wanted to honor Charlie Kirk's death, they would start pushing a message of unity. Because right now, if they continue down this divisive path, what they're going to do is isolate themselves in the same way that Charlie Kirk isolated himself, because he became so hateable.
Charlie Kirk tweeted something very negative about Islam and Muslims. You can see it here in this tweet. And I immediately reached out to him to address the misinformation in his tweet and just outright lies. Now, Charlie responded to my email and we exchanged messages respectfully. We even exchanged phone numbers. So behind the scenes, I was talking with him over the email and addressing things that he had mentioned in his tweet. Now, eventually, we had our first phone conversation lasting around 30 to 45 minutes. I felt it went very well. You know, you have long conversation, you can't remember everything, but this was one of the parts that I really remember clearly. And I'll never forget Charlie acknowledging to me that he knew nothing about Islam and that he had been taught to hate Islam. Charlie told me he had many Serbian friends growing up, and sadly, many Serbs are also taught to just hate Muslims.
What you want to do is start relaxing that and start evolving. Anyway, it might be needless to say based on that clip that we just heard.
And Jewish donors, they have a lot of explaining to do.
And lots of clips floating around that in these last few months, Kirk exhibited signs of extreme anti-Semitism. He was on Megyn Kelly recently expressing his frustration with how heavily he was being attacked and called an anti-Semite by the Jewish people and probably non-Jewish Zionists in his orbit.
I think it's a hyper paranoid, like we're just going to just stamp out everything type of practice.
I hope you heard that. Charlie Kirk is saying that some of the most influential people in the world are so paranoid that they have a stamp out everything kind of practice. His words, not mine.
I think it's a hyper paranoid, like we're just going to just stamp out everything type of practice. But it goes to the point where if, for example, if I have less ability sometimes online to criticize the Israeli government without backlash than actual Israelis do. Mm-hmm. And that's really, really weird. Isn't it, Megan? That's not right.
A message to all those who choose the religion or cult of Zionism. Take Charlie's word for it.
Cue
well said.
The 25 text messages from people I know, like friends who are pro-Israel, like, I'm so sad that you've left us. I'm so sad let's debate it. You know, many Jewish advocates saying, let me come on your show and we'll debate. There's nothing to debate. I'm on Israel's side. Just stop.
How much harassment do you have to receive in order for you to do this publicly?
There's nothing to debate. I'm on Israel's side. Just stop. Me observing that you're losing the propaganda war and that this has gone on for about 2 years now
is not anti-Semitic. I don't know what these educated adults need to realize, that it doesn't matter how much on Israel's side you are. You are not allowed to have an independent thought. And I'm not saying that Charlie Kirk was killed for his anti-Semitism, but you will be called anti-Semitic for being curious, for asking questions, for challenging the narrative.
I got texts about you, Megan, saying, why is Megan like doing the bidding of Hamas? I was like, what are you talking about? Megan's the best.
Okay, quiz time. What happens when Israel starts seeing people as Hamas? Does anyone know the answer to that?
This is what they don't understand. You and I, Megan, and Tucker is in the same category, and they've tried to go after Tucker.
Yeah.
Is that the more you attack our moral character, the more we're going to double down in a direction. Because 100%. Screw you, I don't do it that way, okay? I'm an American, okay? I represent this country, and I don't even understand that paradigm. But Megan, I think you would agree with this. I want to make sure we really zero in on this. The more that you guys privately and publicly call our character into question, which is not isolated, right? And to be fair, some of my really good Jewish friends are like, that's not all of us, it's all, but these are leaders too, though, right? These are stakeholders, right?
He took massive abuse from his own donors, which is also something that you don't see people. And he loved his donors. It wasn't a hostile thing, but they had a different view. A lot of them, not all, but a lot. And they expressed it to him in a very intense way. I know because he showed me. And he said, look, I understand your perspective. This is my perspective. And we're going to do what we think is the right thing, the wise thing.
In that way, too, he was the voice of young people. I mean, there are no young people in the country anymore supporting this war and wanting Israel to continue its bombing. Do you worry, Tucker? People have asked me this in the last 24 hours, and I'll ask you the question. You know, there's not another more prominent news person than you, and there's not one that's been attacked with the same terms they used against Charlie that have been used against me too, than you. So do you worry now? Because the shooter's at large, and even once they catch this guy, and I think they will catch this guy, he's not the only deranged person out there or agenda driven.
So I'm not actually worried. I mean, I've had several things that I consider very, very close calls. And so over the last 20 years, so I've thought about it a lot. And I feel, I just feel sad for Charlie's family. I feel
I'm afraid because, again, I want civilization to win. I want the West to win. I don't want the Islamo-fascist barbarians to storm the gates of Jerusalem. I want the holy sites protected. I believe in the Holy Land. I feel the connection to Israel. But at the same time, simultaneously, when the hostile reaction is that now Meghan and Charlie are enemies?
A lot of hostility for asking questions, for encouraging his base to ask questions about Israel. Now, Charlie truly believed that his grooming made him into a warrior of the West, a defender of the West. I mean, he had no nuance in his Islamophobic rhetoric. None. It was just straight Islamophobia for the benefit of Israel. And still, he was not allowed to ask few questions without being attacked aggressively, called an anti-Semite, being told that his friends were Hamas for asking mild questions. I'm not saying like the questions were mild, I'm saying they were asking it mildly. You know what I mean? But this is what happens when you make a deal with the devil, a deal with organized criminal networks. And what I can also say about Charlie is that some of his messaging was pro-American. And you can see him struggling here because his grooming was so good that he was just like, why does this not feel pro-American?
I'm an American, okay? I represent this country, and I don't even understand that paradigm. I don't even understand that paradigm.
Like, he was starting to feel that energy, right? Because he's like, what? Why? Why is this, like, I'm American. I have to put my priorities and the priorities of my base first. And it started to click a little bit. Like, the Matrix started to glitch for him a little bit. It's like my episode that I made for Tucker a couple of weeks ago where I said, Tucker, do you realize how dumb the plan was? It's like Charlie didn't realize that he was helping the destruction of the West by pushing all of this Islamophobic and sort of like racialized rhetoric that was extremely divisive without offering enough nuance into the discussion. And he was groomed into this agenda to perpetuate the dehumanization of our country, the dehumanization of the West, in the same way that people on the left are groomed to do that to the right. It's one dehumanizing rhetoric versus another. And you will find that the media is making sure that we engage in this. Interestingly enough, the European Parliament is doing its own version of COVID hearings, and they're making bold statements that the mRNA vaccine was specifically designed, based on the data, to take down the West. What? So, hardcore pro-Israel Kirk says Jewish donors are funding destabilizing open border policies, which every right-wing person believes is a direct attack on the West. And now, political consultant and left-wing journalist Naomi Wolf, and author of the Pfizer papers, makes a similar claim at the EU Parliament COVID hearings. And I'm going to play this for you, but it's very glitchy. I think the live streaming of this event was under heavy attack because I couldn't find a clean version of this, but I tried to edit it so that it's not so glitchy.
You have to conclude, since year after year after year unfolded, knowing this damage, that Pfizer knew, your elected officials knew, your public health authorities knew. This is my speculation. I await an investigation. There was collusion at the highest levels to make this happen. I'd love for it to be an accident or corporate greed, but it isn't. It is a mass murder. And again, I say this deeply knowingly, as a Jew, as the granddaughter of Rosa and Joseph Wolf and all of their lost brothers and sisters, this is the greatest crime against humanity in recorded history, just numerically, because billions of people have been injected with this. So I will end by telling you why I believe it's a bioweapon and that it was deployed, in effect, to reduce Western populations and influence. There are 11 manufacturing plants in Western Europe, 14 now in North America. But the side effects are not random. And again, to me as a journalist, rather than as a doctor, this is very important evidence. Of the almost 43,000 serious adverse events in the Pfizer papers, they're not randomly distributed around the world. They're localized in Western democracies. And not only that, but this really caught my attention as a political consultant. The greatest number of serious adverse events are in the countries with the most influence in Western democracies. So over 42,000 in the United States, and then after tranches of serious adverse events in European countries in descent of political importance, population importance. So Germany, France, Britain, Italy, Spain, Greece, in that order. And then all the rest of the world, the other 52 countries of the world combined amount to about 7,000 adverse events.
I think this hearing is worth listening to, and I think the Senator Ron Johnson's hearings are worth listening to as well. But the cat's coming out of the bag, and that's what she's saying. The pattern is the highest amount of adverse reactions happened in Western democratic countries. And I don't know what the health is of European democratic countries, but obviously America is the worst. We have the worst health outcomes for any Western country. Our country is taken advantage of the most. And there is like this depopulation agenda for the West, which also would mean that this open border immigration policy is intentional. And as Charlie Kirk pointed out, a lot of Jewish donors are funding these open border policies, and we can imagine that they're funding them all around the Western world. And they're pretend pointing fingers at each other so that we could really point fingers at each other about who's responsible for the open border policies and the chronic health decline of our country and the mass poisonings and everything else that they're funding. And what Naomi Wolf is basing her claims on? Well, the 450,000 documents that Aaron Siri received after spending 2 years suing the CDC to release the vaccine data. Remember this guy?
It took us 2 lawsuits, actually, so we sued them 2 different ways, and only when they had no choice, they finally released the data after a year and a half.
And you first filed a FOIA request.
Yes.
And they should have just, boom, they should have handed it over to you.
It would have taken them seconds.
They should have, so now drum roll.
Yes.
What did the VSAVE data show?
So let's be clear. The bioweapon that was unleashed did not discriminate. While they're sicking us on each other, they're funding bioweapons that target all of us indiscriminately. Now, if Charlie was allowed to live a month longer, maybe he would have discovered who funded the bioweapon that seemed to have been designed to completely destabilize the West and informed his base. Imagine the unity that would have inspired. But he gets taken out, just as predicted a month ago.
I just want to read out the exact tweet that I was referencing earlier from August. If Charlie turned heel on Israel, they would have someone shoot him at an open air event, and they have some idiot groiper with a genetically anomalous issue there to be a patsy/fall guy. Part of why you never make the deal with the devil in the first place. This was posted in August.
And Ben Shapiro, of all people, announces that he's taking over TPUSA in Charlie's honor less than 48 hours after his death. At least give it a week. It's just so messy, but intentionally so, I think. I think there's a hubris involved here and a coyness involved here that seems to be a pattern, let's just say. And every Zionist influencer who is trying to distract us from investigating Israel after Charlie Kirk told a friend Israel would kill him if he deviated and expressed frustration and fear of his donors on Megyn Kelly's show should be investigated and subpoenaed. And just to give you a sense of how dark this entire thing is, PBD said something really eerie that I think should give all of us pause.
If in the next few days, an opposing Charlie Kirk figure, I won't give names because I don't even want to put those names out there. If in the next week, an opposing person from the left gets assassinated, you have to know this is happening from an outside source, a different country that wants to see America have a civil war.
First of all, I no longer trust PBD. I used to kind of respect him, but then I realized that he was a Zionist shill, and I just don't respect him anymore. But what he's saying here is very interesting, right? And obviously he says it in the next few days, but it could really be before the November election. Anytime between now and the November election, or even just directly after the November election, maybe. But my thinking is, what if the next target is Mamdani? 2 very influential people who have the power to galvanize the anti-Israel movement to be censored permanently. The right would predictably celebrate his death in the way the Zionists celebrate innocent Palestinian deaths, because according to them, he's an anti-Semitic Hamas sympathizer who openly hated Jews, said boldly that he would arrest Bibi, and called for equality for all in Israel, which is akin to saying the Jews do not have a right to exist, because that is what the right has been groomed to believe. And so you see that there would be no separation between the right and the left, unless, of course, if something like that did happen, everybody on the right got the memo that they should not mimic the left, to drive the message harder that the left is radical, that the left is violent, that kind of madness. And we know that this can happen because we see all the time when a messaging needs to come out from the right, they are very, very organized in that. Every single person, including politicians, will be tweeting the same exact phrases and messaging. And I'm going to reiterate, it's really difficult to ignore these people who are celebrating Charlie Kirk's death because anyone being executed should not be celebrated, okay? I don't even think we should be celebrating the execution of the vilest criminals. I think justice should be served, but to celebrate public open executions, what are we talking about here? But the difference between us and them being the elites, is that we can relate to each other. We can be rehabilitated. Most of us aren't pedophiles. We aren't murderers. We don't belong to organized crime networks. We're not blackmailed. We can forgive each other for our weaknesses that we've been programmed and poisoned into. And that being said, I still find it really difficult to understand why Christians especially are constantly choosing to make a pact with evil. Like, why? Why is it Christians mostly? Christ would never condone genocide, never condone pedophilia, and dehumanizing others. Yet Christians have been convinced to do this. Doesn't the Bible warn you about this kind of deception? Doesn't the Bible teach people that evil won't say, "Hey, I'm evil, join me"? Evil comes as a friend, and the only way you end up knowing that you've been ensnared is when you realize you've forgotten that killing people is evil, that abusing and torturing children is evil. When you've forgotten that, and you find yourself supporting and defending it, that's when you know your soul is being sold to a dark force. And the only way I can reconcile how this is happening is because we're being poisoned constantly every which way till Sunday, like through the air, the land, the water, the food, the movies, the news. It's
not just the colleges, the nonprofits, it's the movies, it's Hollywood, it's all of it. It's like,
and so it's highly likely we're not strong enough to realize we're on the wrong path. I don't know, but I do believe that we can all be rehabilitated, and I think we need to start focusing on bridging the gap. Laura Loomer came out with a strong statement against Kirk in July, and you know how aggressively she goes after anti-Semites. And something stood out to me. I don't ever want to hear Charlie Kirk's claim he is pro-Trump ever again. After this weekend, I'd say he has revealed himself as a political opportunist, and I've had a front row seat to witness the mental gymnastics these last 10 years. So they're saying it's been going on for 10 years? I don't know what she's saying. Anyway, lately, Charlie has decided to behave like a charlatan, claiming to be pro-Trump one day while he stabs Trump in the back the next. That's strong language. Charlie played both sides of the Iran issue on his show, as we all saw, because he wants to play to both sides of the aisle. The honorable thing to do is to have a position and actually defend it to the death, instead of flip-flopping. Well, now we understand why all Zionists are genocide and pedophile apologists. Makes total sense now. They will never flip-flop on that. They will defend it to the death. Her words, not mine. And one of the things that Charlie Kirk started flip-flopping on was the Epstein drama. And when we say this is global, look at what Keir Starmer is doing in England, okay? When he's confronted about his U.S. ambassador appointee Mendelsohn, who was just exposed for doing business with Epstein after he was convicted of pedophilia.
His deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
This is interesting, Mr. Speaker. He says the ambassador has expressed full regret, but the victims of the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein have called for Lord Mandelson to be sacked. And just so the House is aware, in 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of child prostitution and sex trafficking that took place between 2002 and 2005. That is the precise period which Lord Mandelson called Jeffrey Epstein his best pal. Was the Prime Minister aware of this intimate relationship when he appointed Lord Mandelson to be our ambassador in Washington?
Mr. Speaker, as she and the House would expect, full due process was followed during this appointment, as it is with all ambassadors.
Mr. Speaker, I asked the Prime Minister if he knew. The fact that he didn't answer indicates that he probably did know. I wasn't asking a question about process, I was asking a question about his judgment. The Daily Telegraph reports today that while Lord Mandelson was business secretary, he brokered a deal with Jeffrey Epstein, and that this occurred after Epstein had been convicted of child sex offences. Given this new information, does the Prime Minister really think it is tenable for our ambassador to remain in post?
Mr. Speaker, the relationship between the US and the UK is one of our foremost relationships, and I have confidence in the ambassador in the role that he is doing.
Now that is commitment. And on the day that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, September 10th, Republicans voted to kill efforts to release the Epstein files. See? Defended to the death. Factions across the world are all in and very committed to defending genocide, pedophilia, and dehumanization of others. Because if you waver, well, you might be an anti-Semite. I don't know at this point. I mean, so Charlie Kirk's death is having the intended effect, putting a wedge between the right and the left that was just starting to unite. In a matter of minutes after the kill shot, the left were triggered into celebration, jubilation, dancing Israeli style, and the right were pushing out the radical left narrative. It's perfect. And then to add to the drama, Benjamin Netanyahu was among the first on the scene with condolences. Actually, he tweeted before Trump. Like, what? And of course, we all know that he's most likely lying about everything he's saying in these tweets. I'm not going to read them, but if you want to pause and read them, feel free. Like, I'm sorry, Benjamin Netanyahu, but who asked you exactly? Since we're getting opinions from foreign presidents, Vladimir Zelensky, what do you have to say about this? What are your thoughts? We're funding your war too, so chime in. Because what the F? First of all, who knew that Charlie and Bibi were that tight? Because why didn't he do his first influencer interview with Charlie? It would have been much more credible and less embarrassing than the Nelk boys. And most likely would have been very easy. If we're smart right now, okay, we focus on what we agree with Kirk on. If we focus on his awful, divisive qualities, we give them the weapon to take us out. What they don't want us to remember and what they don't want us to be thinking right now is that there is a way to heal our country by uniting. And here is something that Charlie Kirk said that we can all agree on.
Is a nuclear weapon against Iran a threat to America? Probably. Could be. A threat to Israel, but is it a threat to America? I mean, India has nuclear weapons. Pakistan has nuclear weapons. Is it worth a potential another war with Iran?
But he was one of the only people to go to the Oval Office and say, sir, I totally understand and think Iran's really bad, but a war with Iran is something that could really hurt our country. I mean, boy, that was an unpopular position.
Brave.
He didn't need to express it. He was for his country and he was for doing the right and wise and difficult thing. He took massive, massive abuse from his own donors, which is also something that you don't see people. And he loved his donors. It wasn't a hostile thing, but they had a different view. A lot of them, not all, but a lot. And they expressed it to him in a very intense way. I know because he showed me.
And the people that are, let's just say, advocates for preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon by all means necessary, they're the same architects that were perfectly fine with the Iraq War, the same designers of the Iraq War.
We can argue about the division that he was programmed to incite in our country later. But right now, we need to focus on what unites us. And if we're smarter than they are, we do this. We really don't have to wait another 20 years to see how choreographed all of this is, right? And when I say choreographed, I'm thinking about the people coming out and trying to unite with Nick Fuentes, flooding the algorithm with radical leftist stuff, trying to like hammer in the anti-trans stuff. They're also going after the vote, and they're going after Christians, right? So some people have suggested to me that an effective way to beat the enemy at their game is not to vote, not to participate in their game, not to play their game. But us not voting won't stop them from voting. And if voting is not that important, they are doing the absolute most to get voters registered. Here is Scott Pressler. After spending hours and hours poring over people that celebrated the assassinations of Charlie Kirk, I've noticed many of them are gay, transgender, or believe in the occult Satanism. 30% of Christians are not registered to vote. So you see what he's doing there, right? He's trying to wake up Christians and saying all the people who are celebrating death right now, they're gay, they're transgender, and they believe in Satanism. You need to rise up because you need to outvote these people. Whether we want to participate in the system or not, whether we think that it makes a difference or not, right now, that is all we have. So I think we really should start taking a serious look at participating right now. Because they are mobilizing, and I don't want to wait around to see if they will be able to mobilize. I want us to be proactive as well, because while we're sitting here waiting for our lack of participation to be meaningful, they are growing their voter base to minimize the chances of us outvoting them. But the overall agenda here, obviously, is to get more Christians and more people in general to convert to Zionism. That's what this is all about. And in this extremely vulnerable time, the chances are high that people are going to fall for this. And if enough people don't fall for this and don't take the bait, something bigger is coming. I mean, I was thinking all this time that they were fully masked down, but they were only half masked down this whole time. And we have to start reminding Christians and everybody that the same people who are demonizing trans and gayness, that same dehumanizing rhetoric that they keep spewing out, the vile dehumanizing rhetoric, those same people are tripping over themselves to protect pedophiles. Like, we have to be able to see the contradiction and continue to remind ourselves. If you're going to call out one thing, you have to be able to call out all of it. There are certain lines that you must not cross, and that is mass slaughter, executing people, murdering people, and pedophilia. Now, while I do 100% disagree with the insane amount of celebration that I've been seeing, I do understand that people can feel tremendous relief when someone in power who's tyrannical falls. And in this case, someone who people believe promoted the tyrannical. But we have to be able to realize that we can communicate our feelings about the hateful, divisive rhetoric that Charlie propagated without dancing like the Israelis did when the Twin Towers fell. And I did agree with Charlie's views about young people not having a future because of the predatory nature of our economic system and our education system, etc. But he had to have known that he was asking his followers to scapegoat DEI in the wrong ways, scapegoat leftist politics in the wrong ways. Meanwhile, his donors were funding both sides of the issue. Yes, he did eventually start confronting that reality, but did he really not know this whole time? And maybe not. I mean, he was only 31. So, you know, that being said, I didn't call for the censorship and firing of average genocide apologists. When I say average genocide apologists, I mean like just regular people like you and me who were genocide apologists. And I am not going to call for the censorship of people who are celebrating Kirk's death. Both behaviors are abhorrent to me because that behavior informs culture and values, dangerous ones, but I value free speech more. Unless you're calling for more executions and more violence, I do not agree with censorship. As for the actual crime itself,
okay. I was standing from probably the third row in the bottom. I heard the shot ring out. I looked to my left, and then I looked over to my right. I saw him slump over in his chair forward. He slumped over. He had blood coming from the left side of his neck down his shirt, and he slumped over and he was carried off. Get off me! Get off me!
Emotions are running high right now.
right? Isn't it highly unusual that the cops didn't immediately tape off the crime scene?
Safety team is here. I just heard them say the active shooter, Charlie Kirk, has been shot. Charlie Kirk got hit, is what the security detail just said.
Is it normal for regular people to be involved in deconstructing and essentially contaminating a crime scene? I want to know who gave the man the orders to do that, to start cleaning up. I want to know, because that's sus. I don't even think they have the bullet that struck him. And why is it that we still don't have an image or footage of the guy with the weapon? Here's this guy who says, John Cullen says, I have yet to see one image of anyone clearly and obviously holding a bolt-action rifle on the campus of UVU. And Ian Carroll says, not one photo or video, and the campus was covered in recently upgraded 180p cameras. And then someone in the next space mentioned that Kash Patel fired a senior FBI agent like a month ago. Now, I don't know if that's true, but if that's true, that's so sus. And since when did we start trusting the FBI? Like, everybody is jumping on the story like, oh, it's a trans guy, stop blaming everything on Israel. People, when did you start trusting the FBI with anything? When? Or the government? Like, give me one scenario where something serious happened to the American public, especially something close to regime changing, and the government told us the truth about it. One scenario. How long should I wait? Mind you, this FBI is covering up a pedophile ring, and the Butler PA assassination, they memory hold that.
Probably 20 million people. And you know, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's sad, take a look at what happened.
President's been shot. Oh no. No. Either that or they're covering. We don't know. Either that or they're covering him. We love you. We love you, President Trump. We love you. We love you, President Trump. We love you. Yes. 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 We love you, President Trump. No. Oh, no shot.
Okay, let's keep our focus here, right? Will the mysterious private plane that took off shortly after Kirk's death and disappeared from the radar be looked into? Which, by the way, is a federal crime, so it should be looked into regardless. And was this 22-year-old kid working with the old man who, after an act of gun violence, confesses right away and then begs for more gun violence, trying to trigger someone nearby to be a Jack Ruby, if you will. Shoot me! Shoot me!
Was that you? We don't know if it's him or not. Was that you? We don't know if it's him or not.
It's like this guy had a long-standing fantasy of being Lee Harvey Oswald and ending up in the same situation. Obviously, he should have been held longer as an accomplice. I mean, he did confess. So why was he released so quickly? Even if he didn't shoot Charlie Kirk, he should have been seen as an accomplice. And I say gun violence because we know that they're moving more and more towards targeting our Second Amendment as they go after our First Amendment. And they're trying to make up for all their sloppy actions in the past, and they're putting a great deal of planning into this. Maybe AI is helping them draft up better strategies. I don't know. Either way, now that I'm awake, I can see clearly how much I have to lose, and I'm not going to take the bait and be terrorized by any of this. You want to know what's worse than death? Being experimented on. Being groomed, being enslaved. And again, whatever Charlie Kirk's sins were, I think he felt the same. He was taking very, very dangerous stances, asking very dangerous questions, and he didn't hold back. I mean, he did go a little soft when he was asking Ben Shapiro about ethnic cleansing, but still, he still took the risk. He still asked the hard questions. Because at the end of the day, being lied to and groomed and experimented on and enslaved is worse than death. So you waive your fears and you be brave and you be bold. And in fact, if Charlie Kirk had had 6 more months, he might have been on a path to unity, like Candace and like Tucker, who has been platforming left-wing voices. But the next pandemic is coming. It is. There's no doubt about it. And what are we going to do when we're all censored? What? And we're isolated from life-saving information. What are we going to do for ourselves and for our family, for the people that we love? So I'm going to wrap this up right now, but I just want to remind you of one thing because this is very serious.
I also want to point out that we have a major generational problem. This is not a left-right gap, folks. It is young and old. We really have a TikTok problem, a Gen Z problem, and again, like we've been chasing this left-right divide. It's the wrong game. The real game is the next generation, the usual idiots in the West.
And I want to leave you with this message of unity.
On the surface, this looks like another political hit, but here's what activated his execution. He started threading Epstein's network out loud, not just speculation, real connections, Mossad, US politicians, foreign blackmail.
Members of Congress are actively being blackmailed. The Epstein playbook is being used on a daily basis. Jeffrey Epstein was not a financier. He was not a hedge fund manager. Jeffrey Epstein was a key player in a multi-decade blackmail operation against the most powerful people on the planet.
Then he hosted a fair debate with a Zionist. He was not hateful. He was surgical. That's when they called him anti-Semitic. Not for hate, but for breaking narrative control. When you decode Babylon, they don't debate you, they delete you. Here's why this was military, not civilian. This wasn't some angry leftist with a gun. It was field level precision. Neck shot, mid-speech, in public. Plane leaves the airspace, disables tracking, then turns it back on. Multiple fake shooters reported. That's a mimic tactic. Classic covert play. Confuse the crowd, flood the feed, delay the truth until everyone forgets. This was not about Charlie. It was about you. If they can kill the face of the resistance, they hope the body will shut down. But the 144,000 don't go quiet. We build. Seal your nervous system. Decode the operation. Anchor the scroll. I promise you, Babylon's blueprint is cracking. The fear ritual did not work. Why? Because sovereigns don't broadcast fear. We collapse it. This assassination was not red versus blue. It was a pressure valve. When too much truth leaks out, Babylon hits the kill switch. But that only works when you forget that you're the firewall. If they can do this in plain sight, what else have they done that you have not decoded yet? Charlie was the warning. You are the response.
And I know you're probably thinking Charlie was not the face of the resistance, to which I will remind you, focus on what we agree on, because the fight is way bigger than Charlie right now. We must waive our differences and unite. Nothing is worse than surrendering your freedom of speech, so don't. Turn off mainstream media. Boycott it. ASAP. Remember, their biggest enemy is someone who can think for themselves. Also, I have a Rumble account, so if I disappear on YouTube because I get locked in censorship jail, I'll be on Rumble. So before I go, I'm going to drop a hug emoji in the comments. It'll be the first comment. I can't pin it because I'm still censored for another month. Yes, YouTube is doing that to me, so I'm not allowed certain features just yet. But I do want to tell you, sometimes YouTube will show you that a video has comments, but you won't be able to see the comments. But I've noticed that if you go to the upper right-hand corner, clicking on either top or newest tab, it reveals the hidden comments. So if you don't see the hug emoji, try that. Because I think one of the things that we need to do today is hug someone. Even if you're not a hugger, I used to not be a hugger, by the way, just try to bring some human connection and intimacy into your day. They keep turning us against each other, but we need each other. And if you don't have anyone to hug right now, which I can understand because I'm a terrible loner myself, drop me a hug emoji in the comments and leave your thoughts. And if I don't see you in the comments, leave me a thumbs up to let me know that you were here. And I cannot wait to see you in my next episode.